This episode of Blacktop Banter is brought to you by Crafco, the world's leading manufacturer of packaged pavement preservation materials and equipment for the asphalt industry. Learn more at crafco.com. Welcome back to Blacktop Banter. Here for another episode. A longtime friend and a great guest. Let's jump into it and see what pops up here on Blacktop Banter. All right, Todd, here we are.
What's happening, Marvin? How are you?
Good, man. Good. We've talked about this for a while, and it's finally rolled around where we're able to make it happen. Chris makes me batch these podcasts. Like, he doesn't make me, but he keeps insinuating that's what I should do, is do these all at once so that I can have more free time. I've never really understood free time, but hey, we're going to give it a shot, and I'm pretty sure with more free time, I can fill it with more work.
So are you doing a bunch today?
We did one today, and then we're doing this one. And then
can you tell me who it was with, since it'll probably come out before mine?
It came out with a good friend of ours, Brandon Leone.
Okay. Oh, Brandon.
Yeah.
I love that guy, man, and what he's doing.
He's a solid, good guy.
Yeah. New to the industry, too, and like really good.
Relatively green. He adapted really well, really quickly, you know, to how to make the most of what we do here. So kudos to that kid. And he ain't even a kid. He's got two kids, one on the way, I think he was telling me. And, you know, doesn't have a wrinkle anywhere on his body, which is just crazy.
His whole body, Marvin?
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he wears tight clothes. I would see them.
Okay, so you can tell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen a lot of people throughout my life, believe it or not. Not like that. I just mean with my eyes, Chris. Take it easy. Gosh.
How do we get off the rails that fast?
Yeah, it did. It got off quick. All right. We'll reel it back in. So today's guest is my friend Todd Gorell. Todd, we've been a lot of places, a lot of cool places together. Had the opportunity to attend different events together and just be in the same circle and be around each other. It all starts with a mutual connection of ours and a longtime friend of mine, Brian Hess, and had the opportunity to speak at the Steelers Stadium last year. I don't necessarily call it Heinz Field anymore, and I don't know if they're changing it faster or whatever, so I just say Steelers Stadium. But we really connected on that one. We actually 100%. Had the most selfies together of that whole event, and we shot and hit 7 of them, which is fantastic. I don't even think Chris and I have that many selfies, you know, in the Snapchat camera roll. But here we are. And since then, you've been doing a lot, man. You've been a lot of places, talking lots. I see it everywhere on LinkedIn and whatnot. You guys are doing a fantastic job with our friends there too as well. But tell us what your title is at TBG, and then tell us a little bit of background about how you got to this point in the industry.
Sure. Yeah, would love to. Well, thank you for having me on. And it seems like every time you and I are together, we're at a pretty cool location. The Sand Pearl for the Ignite event last year, or at Heinz Field. And so let's continue that. Let's continue that tradition for sure. Because I enjoy your company, but when you're in a special place like that, I still call it Heinz Field, by the way. And, you know, I'm a Boston guy, but we're headquartered in Pittsburgh, so I'm out there a lot. I'm becoming a Pittsburgh fan a little bit, and I can tell you the locals still call it Heinz Field. Yeah. They're not Acrisure or whatever the new name is. I don't even have to learn it because nobody's calling it that. So
isn't that stretch gorgeous right there where the field is?
Really cool,
PNC Field. Dude, it's totally cool that they're both right there and you can walk right there. And they've done a great job there in that city. I was super surprised when we were there, and it was great to be there with you. But how did we get to that point? You know, what was your career like to get you there? And then I'm going to ask for a little bit of background beyond that. But I think it's important to tell people where your footprint is and here in the industry and what you do.
Yeah, so my role with the company is Chief Growth Officer. And that's essentially running our business development team. We're still a small company. We're 5 years into this. So it's not, you know, we're all still wearing a lot of hats. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of customer-facing stuff. I still work with our sales team closely. Eli, who most people out there in the asphalt world know now, he's becoming a bit of a legend at 24 years old. But Eli and I work real close together, running our sales team and working all the metrics, the goal setting, and all that sort of stuff. And it's a lot of fun. It's been cool. But you know, I still have a lot of customers, you know, that I service myself. I work closely with our inside team. I work closely with our operations team. So Yeah, it's sort of hard to define, but what that's eventually going to be a couple of years down the road is very much an ambassador for the company and working within the company to really secure our culture,
Yeah.
with sales, with operations, with finance, making sure things continue to sing like they do. And
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, we were kind of talking a little bit about that before we came in here. Um, you know, we worked on a quite a structured framework over the last 3 months here at Blacktop Banner, and
Okay.
we really have moments that we should be celebrating pretty big, but we look at the framework on our whiteboards and stuff, and just before we came in, I was telling Chris, I was like, there's still heavy lifting, and you were
Sure.
talking, a couple of years out, being in an ambassador position and whatnot. It no matter where you're at, there's still some heavy lifting to do to get to the point to where you get to do the cool stuff, the relaxed stuff, right, and that type of thing.
Yeah,
Because
of course.
everybody else is coming up with you. Shout out to Eli. That's a Wisconsin product, that kid is,
Yeah,
and
sure is.
just a stud where he's elevated and came up through there as well. But to talk about your rise and whatnot, can you take us back a little bit? Tell us where you were born, how you grew up, school, that type of stuff.
Sure. Um, so I was born in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. Shout out to nobody knows Chelmsford, but just
Yeah.
outside of Boston. And I was a terrible student. Like from grade one on, I did 5 years of high school. I'm sorry, it's so dry here. We've got those wildfires coming in, so we had to
Yeah.
shut everything down in the house, and it's like dry as heck in here. So I'm gonna be drinking a lot of water. I
That's okay.
apologize.
Should hydrate.
So I grew up in Chelmsford, and I didn't get into the asphalt industry until later on. So again, I was a terrible student. My dad worked for the phone company for like 35 years, and I grew
Okay.
up. I had great parents, still do. They're still alive. They're wonderful. But just your traditional, dad worked there for 35 years. You should go work at the phone company, especially since you're probably not going to college with your D plus average. Um, so I tried that out. I watched him work there, and my enduring memory growing up was every August we'd get 2 weeks up at the beach. Like that was his vacation. We'd go with all these other phone company families.
Yep.
And every other year there was this threat of a strike because they were in the union. Then you get into
Okay.
management, there was still the threat of the strike. So either way, they were going to have to go back and either picket or go and work once you get into management. And that's just like it always happened on our vacation week. So I had this horrible image of that life of,
Yeah.
that being my job. But I tried it out anyhow after high school, and I worked there for a couple of years. I was in a cubicle working inside. So it was like New England Telephone, 9X, then it became Bell Atlantic, then it became Verizon, literally in like a 3 year span. That all
That's
kind of
crazy.
happened. Verizon was after I left there, but all the conglomeration was going on. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just learned quickly what I didn't want to do. I
Right.
just did not like that job. I didn't like working in an office. So I found myself in the restaurant world for a while.
Really?
And yeah, and I love that. I managed bars around Boston. So a little bit of backstory too. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. So
Okay.
I moved to Boston. I started doing open mics and a little bit of shows here and there as a stand-up comic. Never really took, and I met my wife kind of early in that journey, and
Yep.
that sort of changed everything, the trajectory. But I was managing bars and bartending around Boston, doing a little bit of stand-up, never paying the bills or anything like that with it. But um, so we got married fast. We met. We were roommates, right? She was living with
Yep.
someone I went to high school with. I went to their Christmas party and they were like, "Hey, we need a roommate." So I'm like, "Oh, Dinah moved to Boston." They were living in Boston. I was outside the city. So I moved in there in say March, and like by July we kind of hooked up. And
Yeah.
then September 1, our lease came up, and we're like, well, I guess we live together now. We were dating, and so that really sped things up in our whole relationship. We were married a year later because we just figured it all out. We're like, yeah, let's go get an apartment and see if this
See if
dating
this
thing really
works.
works.
Yeah. Let's see if this
Yeah,
works out.
yeah, put it
Cool.
right to the test. So I anyhow we got married, and then we had my son maybe a year and a half after we got married. So again, I kind of got into adulthood fast.
Yep.
My 20s, I mean, I don't even want to tell that story. It was just sort of a vast wasteland
Yeah.
of a decade. But then I met my wife late 20s, and it just kind of, that all changed me. I wanted more in life, and I
Yep.
got a little more goal oriented, and we wanted to
I was
buy a
gonna say.
house. And so, yeah, we moved to Cape Cod where I live now. That's where she grew up. We lived in the
Okay.
city for a few years, and that was awesome. But then once we, my son was coming and all that, we wanted to buy a house. So we moved close to her family. And at that point, I'm like, I gotta find a job where I'm not getting home at 3 a.m., you know?
Yeah.
Um, and well, little did I know, but
Yeah.
there was a ad in the paper. Actually, I took one sales job with a startup internet company. I was selling $500 redundant internet in like a 20-mile circle to businesses that had $49.99 a month internet already. Like
Mhm.
this was DSL. What was this? This was like 2001, 2000, no, maybe 2003, something like that. So I need to get into sales. I was willing to take any job. I figured that was the, lowest barrier to entry. Didn't need a degree. If I could find someone to teach me how to sell, I figured I could figure the rest of it out. And I always thought too, before I understood like the science and stuff of sales, that like, well, I can talk to anyone. I got
Yeah.
on a stage doing stand-up comedy. I'd be a great salesperson. When you're
Yeah.
bartending, everybody tells you, "Oh, you can talk a dog off a meat truck. You'd be a great salesperson," which so isn't true, but that was the mindset I had back then.
Yeah.
Thank God I wasn't smart enough to pick up a book before I got into the field. Um, so anyhow, so I got a job with this little startup internet company, and what they were selling was backup internet service to
Okay.
businesses, right? And it cost you $500 a month. It was this point to point, very early technology. And I had to call these like little insurance companies that were paying $50 a month for DSL and be like, well, what if it goes down? You'll
Yeah,
have your
that's what I was
$500
gonna ask you.
a
So
month
it's
insurance certificate.
backup. It's backup
It
in
was,
case your primary goes down. We'll hook you up
yeah.
so you still have it. Because that
And
was a fear. That was a fear, right? Like
it
we
went
run
down
our
all the
business on
time
the
back then.
internet. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But it was, again, a startup that spun off a somewhat larger company out of Austin.
okay.
It was this dude, his name was Mike Daly. He was a great guy. And he was just trying to, you know, do a startup, spin it off, sell it real quick and make a little bit of money and kind of get back at his former employer. A few different things that were going on there, but um, we didn't have enough money to start going after these bigger, like it's a great backup solution for a university or a
Yep.
government entity or some sort of enterprise
Yes.
build. But all we had that we could hit with our point to point internet were like little mom and pop barbershops and insurance companies and bakeries and stuff like that. So
Dang.
anyhow, that
Tough
I learned
sell.
sales the hard way.
I was
He
gonna
was a
say that's a
great
tough
mentor
sell.
though.
Mm-hmm.
It was a real tough sell. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't sell any of it. So after like 9 months, I'm like, all right, I got to find another job because this isn't working. He
Yep.
went on, he sold it a couple of years later for a few $1,000,000. He did fine. And he started another
Crazy.
business, but he was awesome. He taught me how to sell.
Yep.
Like he was a really good salesperson. So from there, writing was on the wall. I picked up the newspaper and there was a job ad for where I ended up, this company called T&K Asphalt. But they were opening an office, or they were trying to open an office at that time on the Cape, and so they had an ad in the local paper. And I went on the interview.
Yep.
I didn't know anything about the industry. Or 9 months is a little bit of sales training, enough to be on the resume, get me in the door. And so I met Kevin, who was the K of T&K,
Okay.
and he would become my mentor. And there's a whole long story here as well. But he was just the most fascinating person I'd ever met. So he's this Boston guy, sort of a big dude, very straight shooter, but brilliant, just off the charts, brilliant, but just a regular down to earth guy. And
In what regard?
I
In
remember,
what regard? How did he fit that adjective of brilliant?
bro, he was just such a visionary.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize any of this at the time. So
Yeah.
Kevin died in 2017. He got ALS.
Oh.
Passed away within about 18 months. So we were on a trajectory, Marvin, that very similar to what we're trying to do now with the Pavement Group and we're succeeding with doing right now with the Pavement Group. But we were doing that back in like 2013, 2012. And I don't want to get into a bunch of specifics. There's a lot of things that people don't really, don't know and don't need to know or whatever. But
Sure.
he just had a vision for this industry that was like no other.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'll share some of who he was and some of the little bit of content that he had back in the day. But he got sick with ALS in official diagnosis was like March of 2015,
Mm-hmm.
and he passed away in August of 2016. And that time, he built an organization called ALS1 up here in Boston that's gone on to raise over $13 million.
Wow.
And just in that time, while he was dying, I mean, he was in a wheelchair
dude.
pretty quickly. Yeah, he's just next level, next level. And but when I met him at the interview, he said to me, he goes, "Well, I don't know if you can do this job or not, but you're a lot better than the other guys that came in today." I'm like, "Okay, so what does that mean?" You know, and I actually did his
Thanks,
eulogy at his funeral, and I told that story. And I'm like, this is what it led to, but I had no idea at the moment. I'm like, well, am I hired? He's like, and he basically said to me, if you'll meet me halfway, you know, if you'll come in here and put in a ton of effort, he goes, I think you could do this job, but I'm looking for someone to build down there that can be a right hand for me, that will listen and be coachable. And I'm like, dude, I'm all in, because most interviews you go to, and I took a couple of other interviews, they're real boring. And they're kind of like, you know, well, tell me about your past experience. He's just like, you think you can fucking do this, kid, or what? You know? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. I don't know. And so from there, I mean, at that time, we had, so that was 2004. We had probably 18, 20 employees. And by 2011, we had about 125. We just went on a tear. Self-performing, regional, New
I was going
England,
to ask you,
paving,
that kind of
seal
numbers you must have
coating.
been self-performing.
Yeah, it was all self-performing. Towards my end of the end of my tenure there, we started a national division, which was kind of practice. We wanted to see if we could do it, and we were doing like 4 or 5 million a year through that. But other than that, yeah, it was it was all local self-performing. We had a bunch of crews doing each kind of discipline, and it was cool, man. I learned a tremendous amount, about the industry, about how to sell, about how to scale a business.
Can you share one attribute about him that made people want to work there and work for him to scale from that size to that size? What was it?
I could share 100. I really could. If he said he was going to do something, he did it. He could bring the vision that he had to the ground. Like the guys, he was a pure sales guy, right? He was a marketing guy and a sales guy. He didn't know operations necessarily, but every guy and woman that worked in the field there absolutely loved working for him, absolutely respected him, because he knew, like, if you needed something at 2 o'clock in the morning, he was coming to your house. Like, he was that guy, even when we had 120 employees.
Yeah, you could believe him.
You could.
You could believe him. Yeah.
You could believe him. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. So he wrote a book. I giggle. I was just sharing this with our leadership team of the Pavement Group. So a friend, Ray Phillips, who's in the industry as well. Ray was with Carolina Asphalt, and he's out on his own now. But Ray, T&K and Carolina had a pretty tight relationship and a partnership. And Kevin was doing some mentoring with their team. He really kind of took Ray under his wing as well. So Ray and I kind of felt like adopted sons of his for years, of Kevin. And Kevin really became, one of my best friends, and we spent so much time together. But so when he got sick, Ray and I decided to spend a day writing a book of all his favorite sayings. So Kevin had all these great sayings, that he would share with you when he was coaching you or whatever. And it was just part of the fabric of our company, and it becomes part of the fabric of your family, and it meant a lot to us. So we sat down, and his number was 58. Everything was 58. That was his football jersey number in college, and he just wove that into everything that we did as well, the number 58. So we wrote a book called, it was called 58, like our favorite life lessons from Kevin or something like that. So we wrote it. I got it just, published cheaply or whatever. We brought it to his house, and the day I bring it over to him, I see that he's got another manuscript on the coffee table. He had written his own book. It was basically the same thing, but better, because he, it was all him, and he kind of poured his heart and soul into it. So I'm gonna get a copy of that book, and I'll send it to you. We're trying to order some more right now for the team as well. So
thank you. Yeah, you know me, man. It's always interesting to me how humans do things out of the normal, right? And just how they're able to do that, and what in them exists for them to be able to do it, whether it's learned or whether it's natural. And for somebody to be able to scale something like that and get that many people on board and just have an understanding of the frame. I don't have that mind. I wish I did. I have to dissect everything, and we have to build it out. And I have to follow
different gifts.
Everybody has
Yeah.
different gifts, but I always am just I admire all the gifts that everybody has and all their talents and what they do. And some people are great at certain things and some are great at other things, but it's just always amazing to me for people who similar to what you all are doing there, where you sit down, draw out what you're going to do, what it's going to look like, what we need from here, 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 and we do it over this amount of time with this amount of effort, with this right mentality and culture, and here we
Right.
are. Right? I mean, that's essentially what we're doing here. That's what we've done wherever we are, and it's worked out really well. What? So you were there until he passed away, and then
So
what
yeah,
happened from
he
there?
passed in 2016. Four of us bought the company.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of very much an arranged marriage, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. Like when you have a leader like that, that's where all the focus kind of is.
Mm-hmm.
That's where most of the energy kind of comes up and down from. Once he was gone, we realized that we weren't all on the same page, basically. Like
Yeah.
again, I'm a salesperson. I was kind of Kevin's right hand. We did a lot of building together, and
Yep.
I wanted to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
The smart thing, honestly, Marvin, because we had his family to think about, we had all these employees to think about, and we had just all gone through a traumatic time. To watch your leader
Yeah.
die, I mean, it was very, very sort of visible watching him
Mm-hmm.
pass away because this disease eats away. ALS is absolutely
Yeah.
horrible. And he was building this foundation, so he had to be out in public. So I think that was traumatic for the company and for all of us as well. And the smart thing to do was just kind of, all right, let's reel it back in and run it small for a while, and then maybe scale someday. And some of the other partners were a little further along in their career than I was, but I didn't really want to do that, so we agreed after I think it was 2017, end of 2017, kind of parted ways, and I still remain friendly with them. We use them as they're one of our partners at the Pavement
Mm-hmm.
Group. I was out for dinner with a bunch of the sales guys the other night. That was my role. I was
Cool.
vice president of sales.
Okay.
So I'd worked with a lot of these sales guys for years and years, and the director of marketing is a very close friend of mine. So, um, but it was hard, and I think I need to get away from there for a little bit anyhow. I can
Yeah.
look back now. At the time, it was tumultuous. It wasn't what I thought I wanted or
Yeah.
needed. Um,
Seasons. You
but
know. Seasons.
seasons of life, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I can look back and say, all right, well, it was the best thing for me, and probably for the company as well, because they've gone on to be just fine,
Perfect.
kind of steady Eddie, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You don't see it. Chris uses metaphor with me all the time about being in the forest and then looking at the forest from the outside. Like when I'm in it, I don't know. I'm just like,
you,
which way
you
am I
can,
going? I can't see what I need to see, and
yeah,
as time goes on, I keep moving. Eventually, I gotta get out and I can see what's going on there. And sometimes that's the way it goes, which kind of you're able to get out of the forest and see, and all of a sudden, Pavement Group. How do what does the Pavement Group do? If you could say it in one phrase, what does the Pavement Group do?
basically we use technology to connect the best contractors in the country with the best companies in the country. Is really what we do. We've got our technology platform, and we happen to be blessed with a team of incredible people that utilize that and build great relationships on both sides, and that's what we do. We connect.
Yeah, yeah, and I will agree with you about the team. It's fantastic. Like everybody who I've ever
Yeah,
come in contact with, you guys move fast. You move well. You're efficient. You want great work done, and it. I think that's what makes, in my opinion, which I love you all anyways. If I didn't, I still would say that maybe that's what makes TPG different is the fact that you're able to hold certain things in high regard that don't necessarily that may not make the absolute greatest sense on somebody else's P&L that's a national contractor or whatever because they
that's
don't
fair.
hold those things to a high standard. It's about are we making this amount of money or doing this or whatever. When I deal with everybody at TPG, they ask questions that other national contractors don't ask. They just want to know, hey, can you get this bid to us by then? And
Yeah,
can you move? Can you come down on this a little bit? Can you come down on this a little bit? Can you come down on this a little bit? I've never had that problem, and we bid a few projects great with TPG. Um, how do you think networking has helped you with TPG? You know, we talk about what we do and what we've done well at different
Sure.
events and how we've been here and there and how we connect this person with that person and everything. Um, you know, as we get ready to transition into a commercial break, I want to ask you that question because I think that you're exceptional at it. Were you?
Oh, thank you.
Does that come from the history managing the bars and whatnot and taverns and then being in front of people? And
Could be.
how has that helped you at TPG?
Well, I think it comes from a place of necessity. You know, as I said, I
Okay.
had to figure out how to sell pretty quickly. And so like 2006, we were doing a lot of development work, like putting in roads where we live, south of Boston, southeastern Massachusetts. There was a ton of new neighborhoods and a lot of development going on. So that work was pretty easy, but we were getting beaten up.
Okay.
Um, yeah, you know, when you're doing new construction, you got to wait for the bond, you got to wait for the last 10%. You're in, you're out, you're at the contractor's kind of whim, right?
Yep. That's,
And we just didn't want to be that company anymore. So we literally made a pivot in about 18 months into commercial real estate, doing more maintenance work, patching and seal coating,
mm-hmm,
and then trying to get larger like mill and pave jobs.
mm-hmm.
Well, the timing of that was hard because that was like 2007, 2008. You know, better lucky than good because the housing market just burst. There
Right.
were no more roads to put in. We just, I mean, it wasn't a planned thing necessarily, other than we were just sick of getting strung out for our money. Um, but we started pushing in that marketplace, and then the economy started to retract, and there was less and less of that work, and we had to fight for it. Boston's a really tight knit area, like Iram, BOMA, property managers, commercial real estate folks,
Yep.
and vendors. Like it's a really tight network. So we had to bust into that. I had to learn how to
Okay.
do that, and that's where I really learned it on like the ground level, just kind of figuring it out myself. And Kevin, who I was talking about, we would just go and throw the badge on and
Yeah.
meet as many people as we could at BOMA. It's like CBRE and Prologis and Transwestern. They had a lot of
Yeah.
stuff up here. They were intimidating to us. We hadn't
Yeah,
put in
dude,
roads for.
CBRE is intimidating every time still to me. You know,
Yeah,
that's
no,
it's
absolutely.
a big company.
Yeah, and we had to kind of be like, yeah, no, we've been milling and paving parking lots around Boston forever, even though
Yeah.
we've been kind of doing smaller work.
Mm-hmm.
I remember actually the very first large job I looked at. That's not true. It was the second largest job I looked at. The
Okay.
first one we got, all right, it was before that, the largest job. I'm sorry, this is confusing. Largest job we had done before that was about 200,000. We won the $600,000. It was a condo, like
Okay.
repaving a condo. It was down on Cape Cod, ironically. And at one of these networking events, I met this guy, Bob Morelli, who became one of my mentors and amazing guy, great friend of mine, but really helped me build my career. And he was a construction manager for this company called First Realty. And he had said, I've told him this story since, so I could share it. But
Yeah.
you know, we met, and he's like, "Oh, I got this big job in Roslindale, just outside of Boston. You want to meet next week and take a look? I'm gonna have a couple different people bidding." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, we do. We do those kind of places all the time.
Yeah.
HOAs. We got a big one going on down the Cape."
Yeah.
So it's a $4 million job. I
Mhm.
had no idea,
Mhm.
but we get out there. He hands me a plan set. I'm like, "What's this? I don't. What do I do with this? What do I give this to? I don't know how to read these." And bring it back to the shop. And, you know, our estimator starts going through. He's like, "Dude, this is a gigantic job. There's drainage and all this other sort of stuff." And so Bob calls me a few days later. He's like, "You guys want to bid?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're in." He goes, "Well, can you take me around to see some other jobs that you've done?" Well, we just happen to have a company's, you know, the history of the company's largest job going actively at that moment. I'm like,
Thank God.
"Yeah, you know, we can go down to Yarmouth. I know where we got one, not far from me." So I went and picked him up. And but that day I spent with him in the car. We went and got lunch. We went and checked out the job. And I'm learning. It was my first or second season with the company. We were able to build a bond. He introduced
Mm.
me to so many people.
Mm.
He was such a sort of a legend in Boston that he legitimized me and
Mm.
us, you know, that, hey,
Yeah.
these are Bob's guys.
Yeah.
And that was just from networking. That was just from being at a networking event and taking an interest in someone. And you know, he was a neat guy, and he's gone on to become a great friend, which so many people do. That's why I like networking. Like I
I
like
do
making
too.
friends.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I do
like,
too.
yeah, that's the richness of life, right? That's what makes it all worth doing.
It is. That's why I keep telling Chris, you know, the two things I think that make life worth living are relationships and experiences. And if you can have those experiences with people that you develop relationships with, they seem to be a lot better, especially
100%.
every time you do it. So very cool.
Yeah,
All right,
for sure.
we're gonna bust into a commercial break real quick, and when we come back, I'm gonna ask Todd a little bit about his podcast, Talking Lots. Now that spring is here, it won't be long before we're back out in the field. And a key part of being successful this year is making sure we have the products we know and trust to get the job done right each and every time. That's why we use Crafco for all of our crack and joint sealant needs. Crafco products are safe, easy to use, and consistent in their quality and performance, so we spend less time troubleshooting and more time building jobs. Plus, Crafco's industry-leading service and support team means they're ready to assist with any questions we do have along the way. So, if you're ready to ditch the hassle and the headaches this year, visit Crafco.com and give their products a try. I know you'll be glad you did. That's CRAFCO.com. Dynapac continues to make an impact in the asphalt industry, literally. Recently unveiling their electric line of rollers and plate compactors, they lead the way in innovation when it comes to compaction, including their seismic technology, which creates a better, smoother, compacted surface. We're happy to have Dynapac as a supporter of the Blacktop Banter community and encourage you to interact with them on social media. For their full product lineup, visit Dynapac.com. Dynapac, your partner on the road ahead. From their iconic hot boxes to their infrared machines, and now the KM Blacktop Banner Edition seal coating unit, KM International has established itself as one of the toughest and longest lasting equipment manufacturers in the asphalt world. KM is comprised of an experienced team that brings you all the resources you would hope to see from an asphalt equipment manufacturer. Check out KM International on all forms of social media and be sure to see all they have to offer at kminternational.com.
Asphalt contractors, are you guys tired of using 10 different programs to create a nice professional looking report for your customer? Are you tired of having to drive back and forth to your job sites to capture photo updates and get measurements and quantities for change orders, or even having to mark your jobs out beforehand? Are you also tired of carrying too much stuff whenever you're on site scoping jobs, like a wheel, a pen, paper, and clipboard, and a spray paint can? We were too, so we developed Spot on Site, an all-in-one mobile app that allows you to measure and mark instantly from the palm of your hand, capture photos and videos that are all time-stamped and dated, and generate instant reports that you can send to your customers and your team members for seamless collaboration. This is going to no doubt help you win more work, reduce inefficiencies, and stand out from the competition. Check us out for your free 14-day trial, spotonsiteapp.com.
Todd, was that commercial break too long? It looks like maybe you might be growing hair back.
It's a concerted effort to grow this hair back, Marvin. I've been working at it for weeks, but
I'm waiting. I've been working on it. I think no, never mind. There's nothing there.
No, you look good with the clean shave. I don't know. I was shaving my head bald for a couple of years, and I saw a picture from an event. It was like a side view, and I looked like a walrus, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna grow my hair back. But it's not an option. Clearly, you know what I mean. So
I'll tell you why.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah. I'll tell you why I look good with it bald. Because of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. That's why.
He's made it popular, right?
He has made it popular. I mean, I already had the physique to match. Now I have the hairstyle to match.
Right.
It looks natural.
Physique and stature.
Yep. And popularity.
You do look great, man. I know you've been on a health journey or a health kick there.
I have been.
You're doing great things, man. Good for you.
Have been. Yeah, I got a pretty good person to keep me accountable. Joe Gorell. He has a shout out to that guy. He's got a company called Based and Built. He's based in faith, and then guy likes to lift weights and work out and do shows and stuff. So it keeps me accountable, and I check in with him pretty regularly. And just like anything else, accountability is sometimes just the key that you need in order to get it done. And that's what we've been doing. Sure. And that's what I needed, right? I realized that's what I could use, and I used it. Which kind of lets me snowball into what we're talking about and what I do want to talk about here coming up. What do you think the industry could use right now? our industry,
What
the asphalt
could the industry use?
Yeah, what could they use right now? Like, what would be either normalized or just an injection of, or to be shown? Like, what could the industry use right now?
Um, that's a great question. I don't, I think there's a lot of great things happening. I'm going to turn this around a little bit because I'm having
Okay.
a hard time thinking of what it really could use. I've seen
Hmm.
it's changed so much in the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years.
A lot, yeah.
There's a lot more technology available out there. There's a lot more young people coming into, the executive and the administrative part of the business, not just
Hmm.
the field employees. And it's given a bit of a rebirth.
Yeah,
It's been a mom and pop industry for the most part forever, which is good, but it was kind of generational and it didn't change because it was generational. It was passed on.
right.
Like, this is the way we do it. And I think, like, you get to the third generation and you're so far removed from what construction looked like in 1972, when your grandfather
Yeah,
started it,
yeah,
that new energy is like, I'm only going to do this if we can do it this way, right? And that's happening a lot. And I think it's cool, man. I think it's, like you were
I
talking
do
about, we were
too.
talking about Brandon at the beginning of the show. He was selling insurance before and, liked what he saw. That was Brian's story too. He had a client that he was selling cell phones to.
Yep.
And he's like, well, what do you guys do here? And they saw a real opportunity to do things differently, right? To innovate in an industry that just hasn't changed in years and years. And I think that's cool. So I don't really know, man. The easy go-to is like better technology or a
Yeah,
little better standards. But I think
yeah.
we're getting there. I
I
really
do
do. I
too.
think some cool stuff is happening.
Yeah, I do too. I think for a long time, right? We talk about how long ago it was, 10 years ago, whatever, and how now we have technology here and young people are getting adapted to it and everything. I think that I had hoped for that, and that would have been my answer to the question if I would have been asked that question 8, 10 years
Sure.
ago on a podcast about asphalt that didn't exist. And I would have just thought, I just want it to be cool. I don't want to feel like I'm going to be doing this mundane task the rest of my life
Right on.
in order to get paid. I don't want to do that. And I think that stuff like Blacktop Banter, Matt and those guys over at Raised, Jake Buck, I always keep repeating these names while we're here, but even now, Brandon at Pavement Mag, he's been out on site with people creating content, doing videos, checking out all
Yeah.
that stuff. And it's like, okay, now we're getting mainstream where it gets people really, really excited. And, one of those things I think is just the fact that content is out there. There's resources for people. Um,
Yep.
Companies are using the content that used to entertain them to use it to promote their businesses and what they do as well, which is fantastic as well. We franchises or even larger companies that provide distribution or whatever, they might just be out there talking. There's a great one who we hope to connect with really soon, and it's by our friend Jordan Walschmidt, right? Her husband and Bill Elverman, I
I'm not
think,
sure
have
I
a
do.
podcast now where they drink various beers on there and they talk about what's going on in the construction world and equipment and that type of stuff. That's really what makes it cool, those types of
That's cool.
conversations. And you could
Yeah.
like our podcast here. This is going to go for an hour. There's going to be people that listen to it for an hour. There's also people that consume short form content that have bits, right? And they're like, okay, yeah, yeah.
Right.
And a lot of those we see from you all, especially the comical ones, um, at Talking Lots. Can you introduce us a little bit to Talking Lots and what you guys do on there? We have some great friends on there. You guys do a great job with it, and some of those little clips
Yeah.
are the highlights of the day sometimes.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. We walk a fine line because the content, first and foremost, you're trying to let your potential customers kind of see a little bit into your company, right? You're trying
Yep.
to be sort of transparent, let people know who you really are. So you don't want to be like my real sense of humor. I can't put out there on LinkedIn. I just can't. It's
No,
absurd.
you got to attend an event.
But
You got to attend an event and hang out with you.
yeah, oh, for sure, man. Exactly. Yeah, that's when you hear the F
You
bombs
get the
fly.
real Todd.
But we don't want to be boring either. And like if you're gonna
True.
do it, you do want it to be authentic. And we have some really entertaining people that work for us. We filmed a Talking Lots episode Monday or Tuesday this week. We had Paige,
Yeah.
Jenna, and Miranda on. So you
Hmm.
guys will see it. And if you've been following our journey a little bit, you probably know who they are. But they're hysterical. And the stories, like Jenna and Miranda, both, they didn't know it, but at Pirate Stadium, there's a position to be a pierogi. You dress up as a pierogi, and in like the seventh inning stretch or something, you race each other around the ballpark. They both auditioned for it and didn't get it and are bitter about it. Like randomly, before they even knew each other. Like stuff like that comes up, and it's hysterical. I'm like, are you kidding me? So those are the things that you want to talk about, because there's some gold in there. Miranda's just hysterical, our marketing director. So she's going to be on a panel at either Ignite or Payvex. I forget which one. It's at Ignite.
Sure, it's Ignite. I'm pretty sure.
I think it's Ignite too.
Yeah,
I'm positive.
yeah, she's
Ignite actually. Yeah.
I don't know if I hope I'm not offensive, but she's a stud. Like
she's
good.
wonderful.
No,
I don't think that's offensive.
She's fantastic at what she does. I don't think so.
No, I'm just kidding.
Like she's good. Like we had some conversations and stuff with a company she was working with, and we were in on a call together, and I was like, there's nothing I can tell you for sure that you don't know, and I'm actually open to suggestions from you. Oh yeah, she's good.
Yeah.
Executes really well too. Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you get into these podcasts a little bit, start having conversations, and you learn stuff about people, right? In that situation with the pierogies, is fantastic. But you kind of shed a little bit of light on it. You want your potential clients to see your company, what you provide, what you do. What is so it's tactful. There's a reason why Talking Lots exists. It's not just to shoot the breeze and have fun, which is why this started and what we're doing. But can you kind of hint or just talk about the idea of why that's important and how that's important to potential clients?
Yeah, sure. Well, from a business development standpoint, it speeds up. Well, it gives you that speed of trust. So if you're reaching out to somebody and they've already sort of met you online, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that you're thinking about doing business with, you can find out just about everything about them within 5 minutes in a Google search and on through the social channels and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you're assuming if someone, from let's say a purchasing manager from a large company wants to bring us on board, I've got a call set up, but the chances are they've already gone through a bunch of my social to see who they're talking with, right?
Yep.
So we give them that opportunity to really see who we are and really see behind the scenes. We get the funny stuff with Vinny and Trey that we film in the office, because that stuff's really happening. So why not turn the camera on and
turn the camera
on?
Yeah.
And you get to meet a guy like Dave Stepanian, who's new to our industry, but he's like such a hard-working, smart guy.
Yep.
And hopefully that builds some confidence.
Yeah.
And it's not just, hey, here at Dunder Mifflin and we're walking around with you're seeing the real people that you're going to be working with if you engage with TPG. So that's the power of it. And that's why we started doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying, you've got the best one in the industry, maybe in construction.
Appreciate that.
And what you've done, well, you work your butt off at it, man. And it's really good, and you're smart, I think, about your content and the way you've branded, and it's very recognizable, So that's the hard part of figuring out, well, who do we want to be?
Yeah.
Brian has a show. Vinny and Trey have a show.
Yeah.
We've got the talking lots, and that takes on. So that's the kind of show that we can sort of do anything with now, is what we realized. So I just gave you 19 different answers to one question. So
That's all good. I think it's great.
But
No, I think it's great. I mean, you want a company that can do it all and has the ability to do it all. You want that confidence, right? We all know this because it's been repeated a million times, but people buy from companies they know, like, and trust, right? And if you are branding well enough and you're in front of people enough and you give them an opportunity to be for you to be transparent and for them to see through the depths, you already are almost in the bag already, right? That's what actually helped Wistcoat grow early on when we started adapting social media, and I was doing Wistcoat Wednesdays or just filming chunks of content and putting them on YouTube and then posting them from YouTube to my Facebook page. I was showing people, hey, our industry, sadly, in a good sector of it, has a black eye. I wanted to put out, hey, we're not that black eye, right? Like, you can trust us.
Sure.
This is what we want to do. And that's really, I would get out there and they were like, and this is crazy, right? Like I think I've told you before where we live, Southwest Wisconsin. I'm in the second largest population in my county and there's 830 people. And I would get out there and they're like, "Oh, I seen your video where you were over at, the A&W root beer stand and striping some lines and stuff. And I got the liquor store over here / bait shop / laundromat, maybe you could put some lines out here for me. And I really wanted to say visitor parking right here. Can you do that?" And all of a sudden I was like, "Do you need a quote?" Right? Like, or
Yeah,
no, yeah, no, you worked for so and they loved you. Just go ahead and do it. Oh, okay. And that
it's
that was a
incredible.
completely different aspect. Yeah, that was a completely different aspect
Yeah.
of it. And it's interesting and
Well,
it's
that's
cool to
that
see.
speed of trust.
Yeah, it's a speed of trust. It makes sense. It works. It's there. It's real. Let's, let's see what
Sure.
we can do very minimally and it have an exponential result. And I think that's what you all are doing really well there, especially with Vinny and Trey and your guys's and Brian, of course, with his show and all those perspectives he gives in the morning. See how I did that there? And
Very good.
thank you very much. I'm getting good at this. Well, I stopped in Pittsburgh. Tell a quick funny story. When we were in Pittsburgh, speaking at Heinz Field, I had the chance afterwards to hang out with Will James, who became really good friends, and
Oh, sure.
he had Trey with him, and we were hanging out and whatnot. And anyways, went into the late hours, and stayed out
Okay.
late and did everything. They were tough to keep up with, but I think I held my own pretty well. And fast forward, all this time goes by, and Trey starts working for you all at the Pavement Group. I show up in Pittsburgh with Eli. We were in Philly, or I'm sorry, not Philly, Pennsylvania on a fox hunt, right? We
Okay. Oh,
we
yeah, I remember this. Yep.
Yep, we get these 2 fox, put them in a cooler, start on our way back. I'm like, "Hey, we can stop by Pittsburgh. We'll stop by the new office and hang out." I get in there, Trey's in there. I got Eli with me, right? And I get up there and he, Trey's surprised. "Oh, Marv." I was like, "Hey, man." I was like, "Yeah, how's it going? What's up?" He's like, "Man, last time I seen you, we were," and I went, "Shh, shh." He was like,
Let's not. Let's not let that one out of the bag.
"Right." He's like, "Right. Yeah, well, it's good to see you." I was like, "Yeah, man, good to
Right.
see you too. I'm glad you're here. What's going on?" And that's kind of when, they were like,
That's funny.
"This is what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna." But Eli was like, "What were you guys doing?" You know, he was 11. He's like, "What were you guys doing? You're out late, weren't you? What were you guys doing?" Like, you'll find
Oh,
out
that's
one
funny.
day. You stick around long enough, you'll hear the
Right.
story. You'll have some of
We're
your
old
own
enough
that
to
you
get into
don't
those
want me.
establishments.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But when it comes to how we're using social media and what we're doing with
Hmm.
podcasting, and then how we network and how that all works in synonymity together now, I think there's just a synergy there of we go out, we create these connections, whether it's on the business side of it. I think it's all on
Hmm.
the business side, anyways. Whether we're at events where we're talking with other contractors or we're talking with the media
At
or
the end of
doing
the day,
whatever.
yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, it's all becoming this uniform thing where it all carries equal weight and is all advantageous no matter what. I think it's all an investment. The network is an investment, relationships are an investment, and what you do at your business actually crazily now can have a relationship and an impact and opportunity outside of the actual project or the asphalt industry that you're working on. What do you
Sure.
have by way of advice for people who hear us, they understand somewhat that, hey, this is a necessity, but they have major reservations about doing what we do or putting themselves out there in any type of regard. Um, how do they get over that hurdle?
I'd love to give advice. When I first started doing stand up, I should finish that sentence. I'd love to give advice. I don't have any real good practical advice
Send
other
it.
than what everybody says is just send it and
Yeah.
don't care if there. I forget who said this. I heard this recently, probably on a TikTok. But like when you're 20, all you care about is what everybody thinks about you. When
Yep.
you're 40, you stop caring what everybody thinks about you. Then when you're 60, you realize nobody was thinking about you, right? And that's such a profound statement the earlier in your life you can learn that. Like I had such need for approval when I was younger, and
Yeah.
even going into my sales career, it was debilitating. Because if you really care what the person on the other side of the table, like what they're thinking about you, you don't want to upset them, you don't want to embarrass yourself. Like you're gonna fail in sales. You have to have a little bit of that, take a
Yes.
chance, fearlessness. But it took me a number of years and listening to tapes in the car and all that stuff to get over that, like the Stuart Smalley, you're good enough, God dang it, Um, but so I've drilled that into my kids, maybe too much because they could give a shit what I think of them. But no, I'm kidding. But I've drilled that because that was a really tough thing for me. Once I got over that in my life, man, everything changed. That's what unlocked the life I really wanted for real.
Yeah.
And so if people can realize that honestly, nobody cares. They're going to see probably 150, 200, 400 videos anyhow. They're just going like this. And if you
Yes.
got 5 seconds of suck, it's out of their brain in 5 seconds anyhow. If you
Yes.
can't get over the fact that you're worried about what people think, then think of it that way, right? So,
Yeah.
being the person that I am or that I had such a high need for approval, trying to do stand up. I just always wanted to do it. I love stand up comedy. I loved hanging around the clubs in Boston. Getting on the stage was like so scary to me. It was so
Oh yeah.
scary. And one night, I went like 5 times, put my name on the list for an open mic and didn't do it. I found this open mic in Concord, Massachusetts that was a folk music night. I swear to God. It was mostly people playing like banjos and telling like, poetry about a tree in their front yard. And
Yeah.
I get up there and start doing jokes about having sex with Alice from the Brady Bunch. But I felt more comfortable there because I'm like, I'm gonna fall on my face if I go after Lenny Clark at Nick's Comedy Stop in Boston. So I'm gonna go out to this, little this little spoken word poetry night in Concord. That's
Yeah.
how I overcame it. So maybe find a channel that nobody's on. Maybe create another account that nobody's gonna see.
Yeah.
But you just have to start doing it and don't expect to be good at it. Just
No.
don't. Like I still don't feel like I'm good at this, and some people probably think I am. Some people probably think I'm not. It's okay. I know I got to do it because that's the world we live in right now. You know what I mean? So
That's a
just
great
start.
piece of advice. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. That's one of the piece of advice, a piece of advice that I got early on that without it, I think a barrier would have been up there forever, right? And it was somebody I look up to,
Okay.
and they were like, "Go back and look at my first videos, and then look at me now, and you'll understand why I say just start doing it." And I did. Sadly, I erased some of those videos. Like I had 25 videos or so up, and I erased them because I had that fear of just like the world is going to think I'm crazy for doing this. And it was no other than I was way ahead of my time in my industry. I should have just kept them up
Sure.
there. But now, even if you do go back and look at those ones, they're still cringeworthy. Like I didn't just, it
It's
didn't
okay
just
though.
happen. I would go back and I would
It's part
critique
of your
myself.
story.
Yeah, I would go back and critique myself, and yeah, I'm my harshest critic, to be honest with you. And every time I say when we're in a conversation, yeah, it's like I stab myself in the gut, and I know it as
I
soon
hear
as I
you.
say it. I'm like, why did I do that? I've been fighting that ever since the podcast early on.
Yeah.
I talk about that where I'm like, I'm trying not to say in the worst way, but it never really goes that well. But I think that that's the one of the best piece of advice that we probably ever got on here for that is it doesn't matter what you look like, what you're trying to do, what industry you're in, the discrepancy or whatever. There's podcasts about everything, and there's people of all shapes, all sizes, from every walk. Every time I've heard a podcast, never have I turned on and was like, "Oh my gosh, this guy just must hate himself." Like, "Oh, this is
Right.
awful." I don't care. I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to the next one. That
No.
one didn't interest me all that much."
Yeah, exactly. But you'll
Yeah.
probably also be like, but good for them for trying. Good for
Oh
them for
yeah.
having the courage to put it out there.
Once you do it, you have an appreciation for it like none other. And then
Oh,
the other
absolutely.
thing that happens is those people that do have something to say, you could give two shits. Like you realize after you do it and understand like what it took for you to be able to do it, that they would never do it because of the fear they have, right? That's why they're busting your chops anyways
Agreed.
because of an insecurity. But yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just
no question.
I have great kudos to you all for doing your thing and all the facets and helping lead the industry and making this somewhat normalized because some of the best people you and I have ever met, we've learned through conversations, I would say. Todd, would you agree?
No question at all. No
Yeah.
question at all, man.
Yeah.
We have, I mean, Brian's, unless he's a natural, he's a natural though, but he works really hard at it. So he sets the standard, and that makes us all want to not just create content to create content. Like we want to be nipping at the heels of our, of the trailblazer there. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's good that environment is encouraged and fostered, and it's a
Yes.
creative environment. And I love that. I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory. That I didn't want to just work in construction again. I wanted to have an opportunity to be creative. So it's neat. It's cool.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we found out here, right? Is that we're doing these paths, and in these paths, I didn't know I was a creative, right? I didn't know that I wanted to create and do all this stuff and have fun and sit down and write out what we're gonna
Sure.
do and put together scripts and then go take shots of videos and all of a sudden learn how to edit videos and very shittily,
Right.
as some people would point out in the room, maybe.
Wow.
But I knew
I'm
that
sure
that
it's
didn't
fine.
exist in our space, right? And it was so exciting.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what people miss out on is the chance that it opens something and creates something in themselves, allows them to be themselves, and I think they're missing out of fear. Some people, but it's a great piece of advice. People can follow you on LinkedIn, especially is my favorite, of course, and find Talking Lots. Where do we find Talking Lots?
Well, it's on all the podcasting platforms, and it's on YouTube. So we've got a Pavement Group YouTube channel.
Okay.
Love it if you'd subscribe. Smash that button.
There we go.
And then we try to share everything out through the channels. We've got a lot that goes out on Instagram. TikTok's starting to build for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a lot through LinkedIn. I'm writing a newsletter. I've got 3 issues out right now. And again, Marvin, it's a creative outlet. I don't really write about the industry necessarily. Sometimes I try to draw parallels, but I wrote one about the NFL draft and probably, what it felt like to be Will Levis and stuff like that. And I always tie some stand-up comedy in, like make a recommendation at the end. And it's it's a creative outlet. But if you guys want to subscribe to that, I'd love that. And I'll promise to keep doing the best I can to put some content out there.
Cool, man. We appreciate it. And can I ask you, who's your favorite comic all time?
Boy, that is a tricky question. Dave Attell is probably my favorite. He's a pure club comic, and he's a killer. And
Yeah.
if I'm down in New York, I like to go to the Comedy Cellar, which is kind of like the Mecca. It's a comedy store on the West Coast, a Comedy Cellar in New York. And he'll do a midnight show. And a lot of the comics that were working earlier hang around to watch because he's that good. He's that prolific.
Yeah.
So I
think
love
he's
him.
underrated. I think he's underrated as one of the best
I don't
of
think
all
he ever.
time. I don't think he
really
cared.
ever went for the arena type,
No.
career.
No, I don't think
But
so
you're,
either.
all right, so you know him?
Yeah. I used to watch. It was probably not great, but when I was young, middle school, early high school, I used to watch that late night show he had. It was Late Night with David Attell, right?
Insomniac, yeah.
Insomnia. Yeah. Insomniac. Dude, that was
That's
like
funny.
my introduction to what Anthony Bourdain did, right? Because Attell would tour these
Sure,
places,
yeah.
see these people. That's why I think it went great, and I think that's why Bourdain's did so great. That format is fantastic. If I could live a dream,
Agreed.
that's what my dream would be to travel the world doing Blacktop Banter across the world at different places and go to all these food joints, talk about the culture and all
that's
these
cool.
different things and pavements and ideas, because that's what I looked up to with those guys. So I'm a huge fan of Dave Attell, huge fan of Bourdain, but I think I thought this way back then because of his delivery. His delivery is similar to mine. If I have a couple, which I know you've been around, and I can pop some
Yes.
jokes, and I do really good at roasting, which probably comes from some of my insecurity maybe too with not having hair. But Dave Chappelle's...
It's how you grow up. It's who you grow up around.
It is. I think Dave Chappelle's Killing Them Softly may have changed my life when it comes to the comedic sense, and I just think his delivery is impeccable. The way he carries people along all the way through this story by feeding them little bits of humor to keep them interested and listening, and then delivers that punch at the end that usually circles around all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And it makes people, by the end of it, you think you're agreeing all the way along, like, yep. And then when he delivers that punch, if the punch is, you should be ashamed for thinking about that, right? But you followed him all the way there, and it's like, oh, God, I'm a terrible human, but he's so right about it.
I love that you know Attell this well. I love that, man. That says a lot about your sensibilities because he's brilliant. You know so the Killing Me Softly, maybe one of my favorite stand-up jokes of all time, and that special has got to be what 20 years old, something like
dude,
that.
it's timeless. Yeah, but it's
timeless.
He was skinny then.
Yeah, he was. He still had hair. But he told this great joke where he's like, I don't support bestiality, but if I had to sleep with an animal, I'd sleep with a horse because you always know you have a ride home.
Yes.
There we go.
Chris nailed it.
Perfect joke. It's a the economy of words there and just bang, bang, bang. Oh, dude, I love that joke.
Yeah, dude, it never ends. That's what humans should do. We should be here to enjoy it and take everything lightly. It's the same thing about making content and doing what we do. Just relax, okay? Just relax.
That's fair.
It's all good. It's all good. We're gonna die. Let's relax. We're gonna die.
Right,
There's bigger problems to worry about, right? We're gonna die.
Right.
Thank you very much for joining us here on Blacktop Banter. I really appreciate it, Todd. It's been fantastic. Looking forward to catching up with you again soon this winter.
Me too, man.
Where will people see you at this winter if we're gonna run into you at places? Do you have anything on the agenda?
We'll be at all the trade shows within the industry. Okay. So we'll be, we're going to be at Pavex. We'll be at Ignite.
World of Asphalt.
World of Asphalt.
Okay.
And then we're doing we've got a couple more trade shows this year. We've gotten into those, the little boutique-y ones with like Hotel Point and that sort of thing. We're doing Supply Chain Point.
They're fun.
In August. They're great, dude. They are. CPMG does a phenomenal job. They're the folks that run them all. Mm-hmm. I mean, phenomenal. We not just got back. About 3 weeks ago, we were at Hotel Point down in Texas, and it was.
That's what I was going to say. That one's a big one.
One of the greatest events. There's 300 people there. It's intimate. I mean, you talk about networking. You gotta be sharp to get a lot out of that for the investment, and targeted and have a plan going in there. But that's where the networking skills come in. But we're doing NFMT down in Orlando at the end of October as well. We'll have a booth there. So we haven't done that one before. The guys from G-Force were raving about it when I saw them at Connects. And we're like, we're going to give it a try.
Yeah. I've never had negative results from attending an event. Never.
No.
Has it ever been, are some better than others? Of course, but I've never had negative impact or negative results from it. So looking forward to it. I'm sure we'll probably see you. Hopefully I'll see you before Pavex. But
I'm sure.
See where that one ends up. So, I really, really appreciate it. Before we end the Blacktop Banner on this episode, I do want to bring to your attention, if you're listening and you're a smaller company and you are having trouble with website design and that type of stuff, or you've done some stuff on GoDaddy or Wix or wherever, and you don't really think that you are bringing what your full caliber should be, we take care of that type of stuff here at Blacktop Banner now with website creation and hosting. If you feel like we could help you out with that, please feel free to join the Blacktop Banner community on Facebook, which is a fantastic little group, and message me in there. Or you can also go to blacktopbanner.com, and we have a drop down there where you can find the website tab and get a hold of us and let us get moving and go in that direction, see if we can help you out. For myself, Marvin here, and Chris, who's apparently rolling dice and playing jacks over in the corner of the studio. And for Todd, all the way over in Boston, this is Blacktop Banner. And in our industry, we speak asphalt. Peace. We've had our 800 networked phone number on the side of our trucks and equipment for a while now. And having branding power over your competition who has a complicated phone number versus 1-800-ASPHALT or 1-800-BLACKTOP makes it easy for people to remember, and all the calls go directly to you. Plus, when you join the 800 Pavement Network, you're joining over 300 pavement contractors who have generated over $2 billion in combined total sales. You can call 1-800-PAVEMENT, or you can go to the website 1-800-pavement.com and you'll find them. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that I've been using Stencil Plus for years. They have everything I need for line striping jobs, from multi-piece stencils, stencils with different thicknesses, stencils for the big box stores, custom stencils, and they have free shipping on all orders within the U.S. Plus, for a limited time, friends of this podcast can save an additional 10% on all orders at Stencil Plus. Just use code BB10. That's BB10, as in Blacktop Banter, at stencilplus.com. From spray tips, pour pots, street brooms and handles, flagging tape, chalk lines, and more, Liberty Supply is a one-stop shop for all your asphalt tool and equipment supply needs. They've been an invaluable resource for us, and owners Sam and Mike are great guys. They're ready to help you with anything you need. What more could you ask for? Visit their website at libertysupply.biz or call 800-397-9907 and tell them Marvin sent you.